The
Surprised he stepped down so young.
Yeah, I think it was a family thing. Like he wanted to be with his family, and they were on the West Coast, if I remember correctly. Um, and at that time, also, he had a young rabbi, assistant rabbi named Rabbi Strom, who was a classmate of mine, who was a really nice guy.
Strom, I knew Rabbi, he used to teach us the Torah class.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And then I think Cantor Rubin was still there, but was leaving at that point. And then it was really
the
Todd Kipnis.
He's a
Great, great, great.
very
Wonderful, wonderful person. I very highly doubt that anybody will remember me from my very brief time there, but I'm happy to know that you're in a wonderful community
Rabbi
there.
Strom looks just like Aaron Rodgers.
He does kind of look like Aaron Rodgers. That's a good, wow, you know what? After all these years of knowing him, I never thought of that, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, that's very funny.
How long have you been here?
10 years, believe it or not.
It's a nice shul.
Oh yeah, no, I love it. When was the last time that you were here?
I haven't been here for a while. I've been here a few times. Not
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, but I know I've seen you before, in my time here. Rabbi Morris, who was my predecessor, was here for, I think, as the full-time rabbi for about 5 years, and then, I'm only the second full-time rabbi in the history of the temple, even though it's the oldest synagogue on Long Island. So for many, many years, they had, hey, good Shabbos, Ari. They had various rabbis who basically were out here really only during the summer and the rest of the time. Okay, lastly, Katerina, right? This is Ari Weller. Ari's one of our great members. You got your talis? Good. Yes, okay. Very good. So when do you leave to go down to Miami? Yeah. Oh, so, and are you gonna stay for a little while?
To the fourth.
Oh, all right. That's still a
30
little,
years.
a little short.
One thing you clarify
Yeah.
came up last week. I never heard it before, and based on what you said last night, people were at the Torah study saying that Jesus came from the line of Esau.
Oh, I actually, you know what? I have to look that up because I'm not certain. Yeah. So what was
Didn't
it?
say that.
I was gonna say I don't think that that's correct.
And then when you said, but the last there was
But the other stuff, though, for sure. Like, yeah.
But the last week Torah said there was like 2 or 3 people were like, no, it's for sure, and I was like,
All right. Okay. So you know what? Between when we finish the service and when we start Torah study, I'll take a look because no, that's a big thing to get wrong if that's especially
last night when you said all the bad.
Yeah. Right. That's not at all the. Yeah, no, because I don't think we want to leave that one up to chance. That's for sure.
I mean, AI said no, absolutely.
But to be honest with you, at this point, AI actually knows its stuff. Like it's surprisingly on point about a lot of things. You always have to do it with like a certain grain of salt. Or I think the way I approach it generally is if something sounds fishy, then I gotta go elsewhere. It's usually right. If it's fishy, it's usually fishy. That's kind of the gist of the whole thing. But
Yeah, I had never heard that.
just gonna.
You don't want to go without the rabbi being
Uh, well, look, that's already an assumption that the rabbi knows what he's talking about. It's always a
The
danger.
rabbis do.
Some rabbis do. I think.
Rabbis are all smart.
Yeah, well, that's a lovely thing to hear right before the service. I feel much better about myself. No, I actually, I mean this genuinely. This congregation in particular, I assume that I am the least intelligent person in the room most of the time. I may know a little bit more about Judaism, but the people that make up this congregation are some of the most remarkable people I've ever met in my life, and they are as capable of analytical thought as I am. And really, it's just a question. Good morning, Ruth. So I wrote back. I just saw your email this morning, so I wrote back, and you don't have to check until now, but maybe Thursday at noon or somewhere in the vicinity. But if not, you'll write back and let me know.
Yes, I'll let you know.
Yeah, for sure.
I think Thursday's a good day.
Okay, that's fine. Wednesday could probably also work just
Oh,
fine.
by the way, the first evening of Hanukkah is 25?
Yeah. I think somebody said that the last time that happened, where the first night coincided with Christmas Day, was 20 years ago or something to that effect. I know. It's not such an unusual thing that it happens during Christmas at some point, right? Like the tail end of Hanukkah gets through. That's not so unusual, But it's.
This is a leap year, yeah?
I think yes, this was a leap year. So I think it was interesting actually. A classmate of mine, when he was in school, did his whole rabbinic thesis on the luach, on the calendar, and you wrote like 100 pages on it because it's fascinating, right? There are all these things that challenge, both being a lunar calendar and the leap year piece of it, and all these things that you have to adjust in order to make it even make sense, and I don't know, I think that stuff is actually very interesting.
The last night of Hanukkah, which is the most light, is actually lunarly the darkest night of the year.
Really? Oh, I did not. I might have to steal that for what I teach at the wharf. That's
Here is the darkest
wow.
That's what Rabbi told
That's-
me years ago, and I never looked it up. I just went with it.
Well, yeah, that's look. There's nothing wrong with that.
It's the most light on the darkest
Let
night.
me ask you, here, the women counters.
Absolutely. So the one thing just to tell you is that we do the full service even when we don't have that many people in the room because we have it's all live streamed also,
Oh, yeah.
and we always have a bunch of people that for understandable reasons. Some people actually that it's not even a question of them not coming here; they're just not physically in Sag Harbor, but they choose to watch the stream rather than go wherever it may be that's closer. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we even have some congregants who moved away who still, they're basically long distance. Which, at like Central Synagogue, that's now thousands of people. Thousands? Oh yeah. Thousands of people. Because they figured out some way to create a membership tier that was for people non-resident. For us, that's I think, a bridge too far. But for them, they're broadcast around the world. So I think everybody is constantly watching. All right.
Ruth, is that Jewish calendar?
See, that's fabulous. Oh no, this is great. Then you can take a look.
Do you mind if I look at it real quick?
So I have one other. I'm gonna spill the beans early. I'm gonna share a Torah study also, Ruth. But there was an amazing thing that happened this week, totally unbeknownst to me. The Women's Torah Commentary is now on Sefaria. It's built into that website that we use. So it's now, when you look up, Rashi or whatever it might be, Women's Torah is one of the things that now shows up in the commentary. So all of the notes.
Pulled it up on.
Yeah. I mean, but that is really such a fantastic thing.
That calendar doesn't have the little moon.
The little moons, yeah. Is that the Apple Bank one? The Apple Bank one may have it. I don't know. Not sure. All right. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We'll get started with our service. And I assume that the Shari is using Mishkan Tefillah these days, Leslie, right? This prayer book looks familiar?
Yeah.
I think so. I think they were even using it in my day. I'm not sure. But in any case, we're going to turn to page 186 as we begin our service with thanks and gratitude. Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. Modeh ani lefanecha. Modeh ani lefanecha. Melech chai v'kayam shechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla rabba emunatecha. We'll turn to page 192, the very top of the page, Ma Tovu. Ma Tovu ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Israel. Ma Tovu ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Israel. We'll turn now to page 195, and we'll read together in English a blessing for our bodies towards the top of the page. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. With divine wisdom you have made our bodies, combining veins, arteries, and vital organs into a finely balanced network. Wondrous maker and sustainer of life, were one of them to fail, how well we are aware, we would lack the strength to stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, source of our health and strength. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh chol basar umafli lasot. We'll turn now to page 196, a blessing for our souls. Elohai neshama
שנתת בי טהורה היא. אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא. אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה, טהורה היא. אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא. אלוהי נשמה שנתת בי טהורה היא. Let's read together on the bottom of page 197. My soul came to me pure, drawn from the reservoir of the holy. All the time it remains within me, I am thankful for its thirst, for compassion and justice. Let my eyes behold the beauty of all creatures. Let my hands know the privilege of righteous deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, asher bi'ado nefesh kol chai, beruach kol basar ish. Oh, good Shabbos. That's like a flood of people now. This is great. Good. We just pour it in. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. That's great. Okay, we'll turn now to page 198. Hey, David, how you doing? Okay, we'll turn to page 198. We'll rise in body or spirit. This is a perfect opportunity, right? Daily miracles. Daily miracles. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sach v'ivina lavchin meyom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach Ephraim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbihi sharumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam anoten le'aev koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavhir shena meinai utnu maha me'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani b'tselem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Ozer Israel bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Oter Israel betifaraha. Okay, please be seated. We'll turn now to page 204, and we'll read together toward the top of the page a blessing for the study of Torah in Hebrew, and then the English at the bottom. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kichanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. O Adonai our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel, may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai hamelamed Torah l'amo Yisrael. We're now on page 206. Elu devarim she'ein lahem shiur, shadam ochel perotehem ba'olam hazeh, ve'al keren kayemet lo la'olam haba, ve'elu hein kibud ahavaim ugmilut chasadim, ve'hashkamahat beit hamidrash shacharit ve'aravit, ve'achnasat orchim uvikur cholim, ve'achnasat kala levayat hamet v'yun tefila, ve'havat shalom min adam la'chavero, ve'talmud Torah keneged kulam. We'll now rise again in body or in spirit as we turn to page 212 for the opening blessing of Pezukei de Zimra. Baruch shehamar ve'aya haolam baruch hu, baruch hoseh bereshit, baruch omer ve'yoseh, baruch ozer u'mekayem, baruch merachem al haaretz, baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch Mishalem Sachar Tol Lireav, Baruch Hailad Bekayam Lanetzach, Baruch Bohodeu Matzil, Baruch Shemho, Bishvachot Uvizmirot Negadelcha, Unshabecha Nebercha Vanaskir Shimcha Vanamlicha Malkeinu Eloheinu, Yachid Chaya Olamim, Melech Meshubach Umefor Adayat Shemo Hagadol, Baruch Ata Adonai, Melech Mehulal Batishbachot. Please be seated. We're now on page 214, the second line down from the top. Tov leodot l'Adonai, Tov leodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha Elyon, Tov leodot l'Adonai, Lehagid baboker chasdecha, Lehagid baboker chasdecha, Ve'emunatcha b'halelot, Ve'emunatcha b'halelot, Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Alehi asur belinabel, Alehi gayon bechinor, Ki simachtani Adonai befoalecha, B'maaseh yadecha aranein, Magalu, Maasechaya, Me'odam ku makshavotecha, Magalu, Maasechaya, Me'odam ku makshavotecha, Magalu, Maasechaya, Me'odam ku makshavotecha. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha, Odi Hallelujah, Odi Hallelujah. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha, Odi Hallelujah, Odi Hallelujah. Selah Shreham Shalom. V'anachnu nevarech yam, me'ata ve'ad olam, me'ata ve'ad olam, me'ata ve'ad olam. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. 150th Psalm is on page 218. Hallelujah, 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 El Bekocho, hallelujah, Birki Auzo, hallelujah, Big Vurotav, Hallelu kerov kudlo. Hallelu, hallelu, hallelu. Hallelu, hallelu, hallelu. Hallelu, hallelu, hallelu. Hallelu, hallelu, hallelu. Hallelu, beteka hashofar. Hallelu, benevel vechinor. Hallelu, betof umachom. Hallelu, beminim veugav. Hallelu, hallelu, hallelu. Hallelu, hallelu, hallelu. Hallelu, hallelu, hallelu. Hallelu, hallelu, hallelu. Hallelu, betziat le shama. Hallelu, betziat le trua. Kol hanshama tehallelya. Hallelu, hallelujah. Hallelu, hallelu, hallelu. Hallelu, hallelu, hallelujah. Nishmat kol echai, tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Can you silently, Bruce? We're now on page 220 at the very top of the page. Ilu finu maleh shira kayam ulshoneinu rina kamon galav vesif totenu shevach kemerchave rakiyam vehineinu meirot kashemesh vechayareach Ve'yadenu frusot kenishrei shamayim Ve'ragleinu kalot kahayalot Ein anachnu maspikim lehodot lecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu Ein anachnu maspikim lehodot lecha Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Motenu. Continue silently, brother. We're now on page 222, the second paragraph down from the very top of the page. Shochenad marhom mekadoshemo vechatuv rahanenu tzadikim badonai la yesharim navahat elam Befi Yesharim Tihitala Uvdibrei Tzadikim Tihitbarach Uvilshon Chasidim Tihitromam Uvekerev Kedoshim Tihitkadash Uvma Kehalot Ribevot Amcha Beit Yisrael Berina Yitbar Shimcha Malkeinu Bechol Dor Vador Yababai Yababai Bye 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 Ya bye bye, ya bye bye, bye bye. Ya bye bye, hi bye bye. Ya bye bye, bye bye bye. Hi bye bye, hi bye bye, hi bye bye. We'll now rise again in body or spirit for the concluding blessing of Pesukei de Zimra on page 223. Remain standing for the Chatzi Kaddish and the Baruch Hu on the next two pages. Yishtabach Shemecha Alad Malkeinu Ha'el Ha'melech HaGadol VeHaKadosh B'Shamayim u'Ba'aretz Ki Lecha Na'e Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Ve'imotenu Shu Shvachal El V'Zimra Ha'ozu Memshala HaNetzach Gedula Ugvura Tila V'Tiferet Kedusha U'Malchut Brachot Ve'Hodaot Me'ata Ve'ad Olam Baruch Ata Adonai El Melech Gadol V'Tishmachot El HaHodaot Adonai Niflaot Habocher B'Shirei Zivra Melech El Chei HaOlamim Yitkadal V'Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah Ve'almad Yivrach Yeritei V'Yamlich Malchutei V'chayechonu V'yomechonu V'chayei D'chol Beit Yisrael B'Hagala U'Bizman Kariv V'Yimeru Amen. Yeshmei Rabbah Mevarach La'alam Li'al Me'al Maya Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Yitbar V'Yitramam V'Yitnaseh V'Yitadar V'Yitaleh V'Yitalal Shemei Dekucha Brichu Leila Min Kol Birchata B'Shirata Tushbechata V'Nechamata Damiran Be'alma V'Yimeru Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated, everyone. We'll turn now to page 228. We'll read together first in English at the bottom of the page, and then do our Chadash, the last 3 lines in Hebrew, just above. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai, in wisdom you form them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai, our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created, may they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Or Chadash Al Tzion Tahir. Or Chadash Al Tzion Tahir. V'nizkechu lanu me'era le'oro. V'nizkechu lanu me'era le'oro. Yadadai dai bim bim bam, yadadai dai bim bam, yadadai dai bim bim bam, yadadai dai dai dai. Yadadai dai bim bim bam, yadadai dai bim bam, yadadai dai bim bim bam, yadadai dai dai dai. Baruch Ata Adonai Yotzer HaMe'orot. We'll turn now to page 230. We'll read together in English toward the top of the page and then the Hebrew at the bottom. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. V'ha'erinenu b'toratecha v'dahabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha v'yachel levaveinu le'ahava u'lira et shemecha ve'lo nevosh ve'lo nikalem ve'lo nikashel le'olam va'ed ki v'shem kodshecha hagadol v'hanora batachnu Nagila b'nismecha b'yeshuatecha v'havieinu le'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tolicheinu komemiut le'artzeinu Hiel poel Yeshuot ata ובנו בחרת, וקרבתנו לשמך, הגדול סלע באמת, להודות לך ויחדך באהבה, ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר במו ישראל מאהבה. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Please join me on page 234. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, bechol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha, ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam lebanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech u'shochbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot ben einecha u'chtavtam amezuzot beitecha Uvisharecha, page 236. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, Daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta lehem, v'asu lahem tzitzit, al kanfei bigdehem ledorotam v'datnu al tzitzit, al kanaf betil techelet, v'haya lachem letzitzit, Uritem oto, schartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, v'asitem otam v'lo taturu, acharei lebavchem v'acharei einechem, asher atem zonim achareihem, leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'item kedoshim leloheichem, ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, Liahot lachem Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem, Emet. We'll turn now to page 238. We'll do the last 4 lines in Hebrew and then quickly on to page 240. Tehilot le'elyon baruch hu mevorach Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael lecha anu shira Besimcha rabba ve'amru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh norat tehilot osef elem yai lai 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 Shira chadasha shibchu geulim leshimcha al svatayam yachad kulam hodu vehimlu ichu vehameru Adonai yimloch leolam vaed Adonai yimloch Leolam vaed Tzur Yisrael Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael Ufedechenu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael Go aleinu Adonai tzvahot shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. I invite us to rise again in body or spirit as we begin the Amidah together on page 242. From that point on, we'll continue silently. As always, please go at your own pace. When you're finished at the end, if you're still standing, you may be seated. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. those that are still davening your silent Amidah, you can continue at your own pace. Those that are finished can join me on page 324 for the repetition. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Koneh Hakol v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot U'Mevi Gula Livnei B'neihem Leman Shemo B'Ahava Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch Ata Adonai Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah Ata Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayei Metim Ata Rav Le'Oshia Mashiv HaRuach Morid HaGashem Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechayei Metim Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Verofech Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Micha Mocha Bal Gevurot Umido Melach Melech Mimit Umechayem Umahatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman Ata L'chayot Metim Baruch Ata Adonai Mechayei HaMeitim. Now on page 326. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam Keshem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom Kakatuv al yad neviyecha V'karaz el zeh be'amahar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzevaot Melo Chol Haaretz Kevodo Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu, Madir, Shimecha Bechol Haaretz, Baruch Kevod Adonai, Nimkomo, Echadu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, Vehu Yashmienu, Lerachamav Leinei Kol Chai, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai leholam, Elohai Tzion, ledor vador, Alleluia. Ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador nagid golecha, ledor vador. Ledor vador, ledor vador nagid god lecha, ulenetzach netzachim kedushatcha nakdish, kedushatcha nakdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush, leolam leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai. Ha'el HaKadosh. Hey, please be seated. We're now on the top of page 329. Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat. Mekadshe, Mekadshe Shvi Shabbat. Kulam yismeu v'yitangu mitu v'chashabat. Nismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat. V'hashvi ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat. Chemnat yamim Oto kerata Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneg Shabbat, Yismechu v'malechutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Oneg Shabbat, Zecher Lemase, Lemase v'reishit Shabbat, Zecher Lemase, Lemase Bereshit Shabbat Yismechu B'malechutecha Shomrei 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 Shabbat V'korei Oneg Shabbat Eloheinu V'Elohei Avotenu V'Imotenu Ritzei Ritzei V'imnuchateinu Kadeshenu b'mitzvotecha v'ten chelkenu b'toratecha Sahabeinu mituvecha v'samechenu b'shuatecha v'taher libeinu le'ovdecha be'emet v'hanchileinu Adonai Eloheinu, Hai Nai Nai, Yalai Lai Lai Lai, Yalai Lai Lai, Yalai Lai, Yalai Lai Lai Lai, Yalai Lai Lai Lai, Yalai Lai Lai Lai, Yalai Lai Lai, Yalai Lai, Yalai Lai Lai Lai, Yalai Lai Lai Lai. B'ahavav ratzon Shabbat kodshecha v'nuchu v'Yisrael, mekadshei shemecha, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. We'll turn now to page 348 and 330, and we'll read together in English just in the middle of the page. On this Shabbat day, as you graciously receive our prayers, help us to hear your call. Grant us enough health to fulfill our duties and the compassion we need to attend to others. Teach us humility that we may perceive our own faults, and grant us the wisdom to be forgiving of others. Give us the courage to be true to our highest selves and the charity to see the best in those around us. Give us patience enough not to become discouraged, hope enough to overcome all fears for the future, and faith enough to know your presence. O source of blessing, look with favor upon us. May our offerings be acceptable to you. Baruch atah Adonai, shotcha levatcha bira navon. We're now on the bottom of page 332. We'll read together in English and on to the next page. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations, modim anachnu lach. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons, modim anachnu lach. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, modim anachnu lach. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression. Modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared, modim anachnu lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, modim anachnu lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose, modim anachnu lach. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, ulachanai leodot. We turn to page 334, Sim Shalom, prayer for peace at the top of the page. Sim Shalom, tova uvracha, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yisrael hamecha barcheinu yotzreinu kulanu kechad ve'or panecha ki ve'or panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu. Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha, Chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ועל כל ישראל עמך, תורת חיים ואהבת חסד, ואהבת חסד, וצדקה וברכה ורחמים, וחיים ושלום. שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים ורחמים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל עמך, וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים ורחמים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל עמך. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. Let's read together now on the top of page 337 in English. Prayer is not purely an act. All things pray and all things pour forth their souls. The heavens pray, the earth prays, every creature and every living thing. In all life there is longing. Creation is itself but a longing, a kind of prayer to the Almighty. What are the clouds, the rising and the setting of the sun, the soft radiance of the moon and the gentleness of the night? What are the flashes of the human mind and the storms of the human heart? They are all prayers, the wordless outpouring of boundless longing for God. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Shabbat shalom, everyone. So I'll tell you at the outset, this is perhaps a little bit less of a drasha and a little bit more of a teaching, with maybe a drasha that will come in at the end. And I'm very inspired by Ruth in this case, and I'll tell you why. For many years, Ruth, you've been asking for us to bring somebody to the temple who is an expert in trope and understanding why particular trope appear in particular places. I am not that, but I noticed something this week that I had never noticed before in the section that I chose to read. And I wanted to talk a little bit about one particular trope mark and what might be going on in the text. So this is one of those mornings where it'll be very helpful to have your Chumash with you in front of you. So if you have the Women's Torah Commentary, which is the green-colored Chumash, we're on page 188, toward the middle of the page, beginning of chapter 33. Again, page 188 if you have the green-colored Women's Torah Chumash. If you're on page, in the Plowed Chumash, we're on page 221. Okay, so 221 Plowed Chumash, 188 Women's Torah Commentary. In both cases, we're looking at the first verse of chapter 33. So first, a little context. Okay, as we talked about last week, as I talked about much more extensively last night, we're continuing the narrative of Jacob and his brother Esav, and after the stealing of, we'll use the words, of the birthright and ultimately of the blessing, Jacob was sent away by Rivkah to make sure that Esav doesn't kill him. He ends up with his relative Lavan, ends up for a series of events marrying two women, coming back now with, right, he left, as he says in his own words earlier in the Parsha, I left with basically a stick in my hand and that was it. And then God brings me back to the land now with many children, all sorts of things and all of that. But of course, with that comes an inevitable confrontation with his brother, who hasn't exactly just been sitting around doing nothing. He himself is now a pretty powerful chieftain, and we're told has 400 armed soldiers in his retinue. And this sort of coming together is a anxious moment for Jacob, to say the very least. And the beginning of this week's Parsha is the very famous story of Jacob wrestling with the Ish, with this unknown person who the rabbis attribute to being an angel, different readings on which angel we're talking about, all sorts of different things which we'll get into a little more in Torah study. But needless to say, Jacob is still very, very anxious about this meeting, so much so that he tries to do various things to mitigate his risk to some degree. rabbis argue whether he's doing that in a self-preservation way or whether he's doing that to preserve the others that he loves, his wives, his children, and so on. We'll discuss that a little more in Torah study as well. But basically, he's anxious. And Esav, and this is what the focus of my drash last night, depending on how you read things, if you take the rabbinic read as this sort of arch villain character who is, kind of waiting for his moments to strike and does all these things that the Torah text itself doesn't actually say. And Torah text paints him, in this case, actually as somebody who's looking for reconciliation, who's actually rather gracious in his acceptance of his brother's apology, refuses to take his gifts, all sorts of things that take place. But nonetheless, there is a tension in the back and forth. And a lot of the tension, it seems, is really in Jacob's case. He's really not sure what to make of his brother. Even when his brother is sort of indicating that there is some love there still, there's a hesitancy there that you have to see kind of between the lines. Now, the rabbis provide a lot of that commentary, but what I stumbled on just by looking again carefully at chapter 33 is there's a recurrence of a particular trope at very particular moments that I could not find any explanation of anywhere. So that's why I will say I could be entirely wrong about this, but I noticed a couple of things that I wanted to share. So first, just as a reminder to us, the Torah text itself, when you look in a scroll of the Torah, you will never find any punctuation, you will never find any notes that we sing. You will find various scribal unique elements to certain words. You'll see what are called keter, crowns that are placed upon certain words. In this week's parsha, as I spoke about last night, one word in particular has dots above it. That's an indication to the rabbis that it means the opposite of what's happening or that there's something sinister at play. But the trope I want to pay attention to, and again, even if your Hebrew is not great, I'll try to point you towards the word in Hebrew so you can see the note. It is microscopically small, unfortunately, in these copies. But if you're looking at chapter 33, let's say in the women's commentary, the first word of the third line up from the bottom, ve'imo. Okay, let's give a second for everybody to try and find it. You can look up at me when you've found it. If you're in the women's commentary again, it's the word ve'imo in the first verse of chapter 33. If you're in the Plout Chumash, same thing. You'll see it appear right below the Hebrew letters Lamed Gimel. Okay, and you should hopefully see, if you squint your eyes a little bit, a note in which you see two dots, and to the left of those two dots, a line. Okay, two dots, and right next to it. So it's the singing of it is Zakef Gadol. Okay, so you have something of a unique sound, and it has a shorter version as Zakef Katan. Gadol means large. Okay, Katan means small. And in that case, it's wherever you see just the two little dots that appear. Okay, so what does it normally do? Both cases. Normally, it's something that breaks up the narrative of a particular pasuk, of a particular sentence. So if there is, for example, a shift in who's speaking, or in the case that a sort of, I guess in English where you might have a semicolon, okay, not quite a comma, but a sort of part of the same sentence, but you're moving on to kind of a new idea. And the main difference between the katan and the gadol is the katan is used when there are more than one word or a hyphenated word, and the gadol is used when there's only one word. Okay, so all that interesting stuff to its own. Okay, but as I said, this particular trope, it's not that it's infrequent. It appears, I think I found, where did I write it down? 524 times in the whole Torah, the most appearing in the book of Genesis. But when I looked at and used that kind of metric, or that kind of matrix, I should say, to say, is it always doing that? Is it always really just functioning as a equivalent of a semicolon, right? Is it always just there for grammatical reasons? It starts to fall down when you look at this particular parsha. So if we skip forward just a few verses, and it's probably worth explaining what's going on here in English. I'll read a couple of the lines. When Jacob was looking into the distance, he beheld Esav coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and his two maids. He placed the maids and their children in front, Leah and her children next, with Rachel and Joseph last. He himself went on ahead of them and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. Esav, though, ran to meet him, embraced him, fell upon his neck, and kissed him, and they burst into tears. Okay? Now, next line. When Esav looked around and saw the women and the children, he said, "Who are these? Yours?" And Jacob answered, "The children with whom God has favored your servant." Now, if we look in the Hebrew, okay, you're going to see actually what is very rare in my experience, which is two of these trope marks appearing back to back. Vayomer hayeladim. If the reasoning or the rationale for this is simply grammatical, this would make no sense. To put them back to back would not make any sense in that context, right? You wouldn't put two semicolons right next to each other. You wouldn't break up a verse in that way. So what is going on here? To me, this is actually less about the nature of the grammar and more about what's happening in real time, right? What is happening when Jacob is asked this question about who are these people with you? Because, right, it may seem like he's answering his brother's question, but he's actually not fully. Okay, Esau sees everybody. Remember, this is all of his people, his wives, his children, his servants, all of them. When Esau asks, who are all of these people, what does he say? Does he say, these are my wives and my children and my servants? No. He only mentions what? What group? His children. Okay? Now, thinking back to the last, right, his father's experience and his grandfather's experience, remember what happens when they're in the land of Avimelech, okay? And Abraham's traveling with Sarah. What does he do? Right, and why does he do that? Because he's concerned, right, that the king is going to take Sarah as his wife. What does Isaac do in the exact same circumstance with Rivka? Same exact scenario here. So if one carries that idea forward to this week, one can posit, and again, this is just my drasha, that he is purposely ignoring that or not trying to identify his wives to his brother. Why? Because he has the same concern, right? He's still not trusting his brother. He's still not sure what his brother is about, and he's holding his cards close to his chest, right? He's not giving away any more information than he has to, and it speaks to, again, the sort of nature of the back and forth of this entire section, in which there is the optimistic eye, what I spoke about last night, who wants to read this and say this is a wonderful example of brotherly love coming back together and forgiveness and all those things. And to some degree, it is that. But I think there is also an undercurrent of distrust, right? There is an undercurrent here of just not being able to be certain what is going on. And, if you think about, picture in your mind, anytime there is some story like this in some other piece of literature, a movie or something like that, where you have two parties and they're playing a bit of an unspoken game, right? They're not being entirely truthful with each other because they don't trust each other very much. And the only way that you know that in the movie, for example, is by watching expressions, right? Physical things. We can't do that when we're reading Torah. But the trope gives us an extra layer. It helps us to sort of hear, almost like, I'm looking at Sue, one of our opera experts, right? You don't necessarily have to know German to be able to appreciate an opera or Italian. You can sometimes tell simply by the nature of the way the music moves that tells you, right, this character who's saying X is really meaning Y. Okay? And the rabbis who construct the trope eventually, as I always remind us, right, punctuation is a choice. It is a form of commentary. The way that the Torah is broken down chapter and verse is a form of commentary, and the trope is no different than that. We don't have as good a sense of where those edits come in. We have a better sort of general idea historically when that begins to appear. But nevertheless, somewhere along the way, somebody is looking to add this extra layer of information for us, but it's only unlocked if we have a sense, right, of both the Hebrew and the trope working together and a contextual sense of what's going on in the story itself. Okay? So this is, again, as I said, it's much more of a teaching than a drasha. I don't have some big point to make, other than simply to say that Genesis in particular, which give us such rich narrative of human experience, of the back and forth between human beings, of extrapolating stories of our ancestors to our lives, is often filled, right? If we think about our own lives, I guarantee we've all had experiences in our life that mimic this in some form or the other, right? When we're with somebody and we're engaged with somebody in conversation, and both sides are unsure of whether the truth is really what's being described here, or whether there is missing information, obfuscation, all number of things. And that in the end, we don't really leave this parsha with a clarity. We have to continue to debate it through the generations. But to me, this is one of those where, our tendency is to, again, focus the negative on Esav and assume that Esav is all of these things. But I think to some degree we also have to point a certain finger at Jacob and to say, what does it take for Jacob to finally believe or to truly believe that his brother doesn't actually want to kill him? Right? What do we have to do? What is that thing we have to get beyond in order to rebuild that kind of trust? And it's hard. It's never a simple thing, right? And any kind of scenario like this is very complicated. Ruth, you look like you have something to say.
I do. First, was this trope repeated here?
Yes.
Okay. There is another place where there's that, when Joseph and his brothers come together, isn't it?
I think we have to look at that. And
When we get there, it'll be interesting.
I think also that there is a Hineni as well earlier on in which this is the case also. And and as I said, sometimes I think more often than not, when you see this trope appear, it really does function the way that I described it, right? That it really is there for sort of flow and grammatical reasons. But anytime that you see something like this, especially a repetition of the same trope back to back, is less frequent. And usually it happens at some kind of heightened moment in which we're meant to, again, draw some deeper, greater conclusion. So, obviously, as I said at the outset, I'm not a cantor, and I am not a master of things, and it feels funny to give this drasha without our student cantor Will here, because I figured maybe he could chime in. But we can ask him next week whether he has any idea whether I'm completely off or whether I have something to contribute here. But, I hope that was a meaningful thing for all of you in one way or the other. And, a general invitation, which I think we've talked about briefly over the years, which is that if anybody is ever interested in learning to read Torah, to learn the trope, it seems very hard at first. Eventually you realize, though, it's actually a very structured system, a fairly predictable one, and one that actually anybody can eventually master with time. So if anybody is interested in that, and one day, hopefully, we will actually get a scholar out here who could really talk more deeply about this. Because for me, this was the first time I ever went in this direction, and I found it fascinating. So, Shabbat Shalom. Okay, now, before we begin our Torah service for this morning, we need to offer aliyot. So, Leslie and Katerina, you don't have to take it, but we like to offer whenever we have guests, if you'd like to take an aliyah this morning, together on your own, whatever you'd prefer, and you can wave it off if you're not comfortable. It's no problem. Yeah? Okay, great. So why don't you guys, you'll take our first. We're a bit of ways. I'll call you up when we get there. Okay, would anybody else like an aliyah this morning? Okay, Drew, you'll have our second aliyah. Anybody else? Myra, excellent. Myra will be our third. David, maybe you'll help open the ark. Would be great. And Ari, you help us with Hagba. And maybe Linda, could you help Ari with wrapping the Torah? And Sue, would you do our Haftarah? Okay. Oh God, I feel bad. I left you guys out. Is there anything that you want to do this morning? Okay. No, you'll help open the ark for us if that's okay. All right. Well, it's up to you guys. I'll let you decide. But if not, whoever didn't get next week, that's your guarantee. You get the. No. They're going to get the first one, Myra. So you can still have the third. Yeah. No, I know. So Sari, whatever you guys want to do next week, you're first up. Okay, if you're coming next week. Okay. All right. So we're going to turn to page 362. We'll invite David up to help us open the ark. Again, page 362, Seder Kriyat HaTorah. And Ruth, would you mind gabaying for me this morning? Okay, wonderful. En kamocha v'Elohim Adonai ve'en kemasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha b'chol devor v'hador. Get stuck. Adonai mehelech, Adonai mahalach, Adonai yimlach le'olam va'ed. Adonai Yehos Lamoiten, Adonai Yevarech, Et Amo Ba'ashalom, Haba Harachamim, Eitiv Ha'virtzoncha, Et Zion, Tivnei Cholot Yerushalayim, Ki Becha Levad Batachnu, Melech El Ram Benisa, Adon Olamim. Mitzion Ketzei Torah Udevar Adonai Yerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah. Lamo Israel B'Kdushato. Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonheinu Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai Iti Uner Hamema Shemo Yachtav Lecha Adonai HaGedula VeHaGevura VeHaTiferet VeHaNetzach VeHaHod Icho Bashamayim U'Ba'aretz Icho Bashamayim U'Ba'aretz Lecha Adonai HaMamlacha Ve'Abid Na'aseh Lechol Erosh Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu Lehar Kodsho Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu Lehar Kodsho Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu Lehar Kodsho. Okay, please be seated. Okay, so just a reminder, we are reading from the beginning of chapter 33, first 11 verses. Just give everybody the page numbers again before we get started. So if you're in the Women's Torah Commentary, chapter 33 begins on page 188. If you're in the Plowed Chumash, it begins on page 221. And just give me 1 second, because I just realized I didn't roll the Torah this morning. So I want to just see where we ended last week. Let's say. Okay, Vaishlach. Okay, perfect. Okay, so it's right there. Okay, and for the honor of our first Aliyah, we'll welcome up our guests, Leslie and Katerina, if you'd like to come up as well. Okay, Ya'amdu. Okay, Hebrew name? Levi Ben. No, do you know your Hebrew name by any chance?
Levi.
Okay, and do you know your father's or mother's Hebrew name by chance? If not, their English name, whatever.
Milton and Sylvia.
Okay, Levi Ben Milton Sylvia. All right, Lalia Harishona. So you can use this or whichever is.
Baruch Adonai, Baruch Adonai, Hamavarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher Bocha Bono Mikol Ha'amim. V'no San Lono Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. Amen. Vayisa Yaakov einav, vayar vehine sahava, vehimo arba meot ish, vayachatz et hayeladim al Leah ve'al Rachel ve'al shetei hashefachot. וישם את השפחות ואת ילדיהן ראשונה, ואת לאה ואת לאה וילדיה האחרונים, ואת רחל ואת יוסף האחרונים. והוא עבר לפניהם וישלחוהו ארצה 7 פעמים עד גשתו עד אחיו.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'hayei olam notah b'chsoheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom. That's Katerina. Thank you so much for doing that. Really appreciate it. Okay, for our second Aliyah this morning, we're going to welcome up June. So for this, it goes right on to the next page.
Yes, Mr.
I should have realized that the easy way to find where we are is that we have the 3 or the 5 dots here. Okay, so I got it. Okay. Okay, Tamod, Shana Bat, Sylvia, Velezer, Lelia, Hashinit. Okay, we're now in verse 4.
Baruch hu Adonai hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vahed.
Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayarot Esav likrato. Vayarot Esav likrato. Vayechabkehu. Vayipol aval sabarinu. Vayishkachehu. Vayivku. Vayisa et enav. Vayar et hanashim ve'et hayeladim, vayomer mi'elelach, vayomer hayeladim, asher chanhan Elohim et avdecha, vatigashna hashevachot, hine ve'yaldehen, vayishtachavena, Vatigash gam Leah be'yaldeha vayishtachavu ve'achar nigash Yosef ve'Rachel vayishtachavu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet. V'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shabbat shalom. Thank you very much. Okay, and for our third Aliyah, we'll welcome up Myra. Okay, Tamod, Masha, Bat, Yitzchak, Rachel, Lalia, Hashlishit. I feel like this is a Musar gold mine of a parsha, right? You know?
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vahed.
Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayomer mi lecha kol hamachane hazeh asher pagashti. Vayomer lintzoa chen b'nei Adoni. Vayomer Esav yesh li rav achi yehi lecha asher lach. Vayomer Yaakov al na'imna matzati chen ve'einecha velakachta minchati miadi Ki al ken ra'iti fanecha. Kirot Penei Elohim V'tirtzeni Kachna et birchati Asher huvat lach Ki chanani Elohim V'chi yesh li kol V'yivtzar bo v'yikach.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam notah b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shabbat shalom. Okay, careful going down. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Shabbat shalom.
Thank you for the honor.
Oh, it's my privilege. Now, before we invite up Ari and Linda to help to dress and lift the Torah, we will take a moment to offer a few prayers, beginning with our Mishaberach, our healing prayer, which is found on page 371 back in our prayer books. Mishaberach Avotenu ve'imotenu Abraham Yitzchak ve'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah u'yevarech et hacholim ha'elu. This morning in our community, we're thinking of Allegra Himmel, Lori Hertzen, Madeline Egelfeld, Rachel Bat Marsha, Sue Wartor, Abigail Blum, Kate Sherwood, Benzie Tepper, Ame and Warren Cass, Rivka Bat Rachel, Lorraine Danis, David Dowling, Sivia Devora Bat Francis, Shelley Newmark, Diane Axelrod, Gabriella Spicer, David Kyle Klopman, Lorraine Davis, Kim Birnbaum, Deborah Block Kroll, Sylvia Oren, Rachel Bat Ora, Peretz Ben Shlomo, and Israel Ben Yitzchak. In addition to those names that I just shared, if you have additional names you'd like to add, we'll start on this side of the room and then to this side, and we just want to make sure everyone is counted. So if you have any names to share, just raise a hand.
Conley Orr, Lana Gassol, Betsy Freeman, Al Hines.
Aaron Bell and Paul Kusha.
Debbie Swansea.
Of course, we invite those watching at home to add the names of your loved ones as well. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yimaleh rachamim alehem lahachalimam lerapotam lechazikam meishlach lehem mehera refuah. Refuah shlema mina shamayim. Refuat HaNefesh, Refuat HaGuf Hashtabag Alav Zman Kariv and Omar. Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are suffering. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion, for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, and let us say together, Amen. El na refana la, El na refana la, El na refana la, Refuah shelema. El na refana lo, El na refana lo, El na refana lo, Refuah shelema. We offer now our prayer for Israel in time of war. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, our God and God of our ancestors, you know that the Jewish people are one nation with one heart, and now that heart is broken. O healer of broken hearts, binder of their wounds, be with our brothers and sisters who've been taken captive, and with the families of the victims. Watch over the hostages, break their bonds, and bring them out from darkness to light. Proclaim release to the captives, liberation to the imprisoned. Comfort the families, bring them under the shelter of your wings. Bring complete healing of body and spirit to all of the wounded. Bind up our wounds and grant us healing. Sur Yisrael v'goalo, rock and redeemer of the people Israel. Bless the state of Israel, the initial manifestation of our redemption. Shield it with your care, spread over it your shelter of peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Grace them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend us. Crown their efforts with victory. Bless the land with peace, its inhabitants with lasting joy. Shomer Yisrael, guardian of Israel. Strengthen and bless the defenders of Israel, who stand guard on the land and the air and on the sea. May we see the promise of the psalmist realized. You turned my mourning into dancing, my sackcloth into robes of joy. God, protect, preserve, and restore peace and well-being to Israel, your people, and together we say, Amen. We'll now offer a prayer for our country back in the prayer book on page 376, and we'll join together again, page 376, towards the very bottom of the page. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who've died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. And together we say, Amen. We'll turn back now to page 370 toward the very bottom of the page, and we'll invite Ari and Linda up to lift and dress the Torah. Yamdu hamagbia vehagoholelet. And we'll rise in body or spirit. Okay. Vezot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai Yad Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Okay, Asher Koach, guys, please be seated. And it's now my privilege to invite up Sue, who's going to read our Haftarah for this morning. And let me get that set. Okay, for Sue. So now we are in our plowed Chumash, the darker colored Chumash, on page 241. Our Haftarah comes from the prophet Hosea. Again, page 241 if you're following at home. It's chapter 11, verse 7. And Sue, I will hope with the blessings. Okay. And first we'll offer our blessing before the Haftarah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzav v'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo v'nviei haemet v'tzedek.
My people are bent on turning from me. They invoke him, Baal, on the heights, but he cannot lift them up. How can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I let you go, O Israel? How can I make you like Amda, or treat you like Zebulun? My heart is changed in me, and all my pity stirs. I will not act upon my wrath. I will not turn to destroy Ephraim, for I am God and no mortal, the Holy One in your midst. I will not come with anger. They shall follow the Eternal, who will roar like a lion. When God roars, children shall flutter from the west. They shall come from Egypt, fluttering like a bird, from the land of Assyria, trembling like a dove. And I will settle them in their homes, says the Eternal One. Ephraim surrounds me with lies, the house of Israel with deceit, while Judah stands firm with God and keeps faith with the holy angels. Ephraim tends the wind, pursuing the east wind, ever multiplying falsehood and violence, now making a covenant with Assyria, then sending oil to Egypt. The Eternal has arraigned Israel and will punish Jacob according to his ways, repaying him according to his deeds. In the womb, he seized his brother's heel. Grown up, he wrestled with a divine being. He wrestled with an angel and prevailed. He cried out and entreated him, who met him at Bethel, and there spoke with us. but in truth it was the Eternal, the God of heaven's hosts, whose designation is the Eternal. Now then, you must truly turn back to your God. Hold fast to the steadfast love and justice, and wait continually for your God. Like a trader who uses dishonest scales, who loves to oppress, Ephraim says, how rich I have become. I have found wealth for myself, and in all my labors they cannot find an offense that is really a sin. But I, the Eternal, have been your God since the land of Egypt. I can make you live in tents again, as in the days of the tabernacle. I spoke to the prophets, I heaped up visions, and through the prophets I spoke in parables. In Gilead there is wickedness. They have become worthless. In Gilgal they sacrifice bulls. Their altars too shall be like heaps of stone on the furrows of the open field.
Join together in the blessing after on page 372. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol haolamim, tzadik bechol hadorot, האל הנעמד האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק, על התורה ועל העבודה, ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך, ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת. Amen. To everybody for helping with our Torah service this morning. We'll now turn to page 374, and we'll invite David back up to help us to open the ark as we return the Torah. Again, page 374, we'll rise in body or in spirit. יהללו את שם אדוני, כי נשגב שמו לבדו, הודו על ארץ ושמיים, וירם קרן לעמו, תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל עם קרובו, הללויה, הללויה. כי לקח טוב נתתי לכם, תורתי אל תעזובו. אלוהים היא למחזיקים בה, ותומכיה מאושר. תרחיה דרכי נועם, וכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה. חדש ימינו, חדש ימינו כקדם. Thank you very much. You hear from school yet? You got it? Dartmouth. Hey. Mazel tov, simen tov, mazel tov, simen tov, mazel tov, simen tov, yehelanu. David, that's amazing. Amazing news. I'm proud of you, man. Feels great. I was literally just sitting with your mom at the morning program at school, and she was telling me you were here and back sooner than later. So I figured good smile on your face was good news, but it's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that simply with all of us, David. That's awesome. We're very proud. Gonna have to come up and visit you, I think, too. That'll be the next thing. And they got a great hill over there, so we'll set you up. Awesome. That's Susanna Heschel. Unless she's retired, that's Rabbi Heschel's daughter, Susanna, who's still one of the most significant professors in the world in her fields. But I believe she's still there. I believe she's still teaching there. So. This is great. Okay, well, we're going to remain standing. Turn to page 586 at the bottom of the page. Aleinu l'shabeach. Aleinu l'shabeach, l'adon hakol, l'tet gedula, le'otzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoyeh ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Page 591. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad. Ask those in mourning and those observing yahrzeit to please remain standing. Everyone else may be seated at this time. I think first of those who've passed in our community in recent months: Heather Abrams, David Aminoff, Luis Crandall, Mal Daphner, Judith Barry Emanuel, Richard Gambino, Barbara Goldfarb, Lita Goldsmith, Jesse Hirsch, Barbara Kushner, Ann Lieber, Robert Lykoff, Jeffrey Miller, James Pappas, Danielle Lisa Rigg, Janice Tucker Samble, William Speck, Harlan Spitz, Charles Spiropoulos, Ronald Seth Tempowski, Alan Stephen Weinstein, Ronald Weller, and Susan Wolfson. We also mark the yahrzeits that occurred during the last week for Dr. Joseph Berkeley, Gertrude Blank, Annie Bookstaver, Emil Brill, Lillian Farber, Erwin Godinsky, Tessie Heller, Frida Hertz, Charles Hipsch, Leo Klopman, Anton Jacob Kurz, Leo Leibowitz, Rosalind Melnkoff, Harlan Noddle, Elizabeth Pence, Hilda Ruby, Lisa Schneidman, Harry Schockett, Louis Schwab, Josephine Schwartz, Nina Schumann, Doris Serow, Melvin Serow, Ralph Spinner, Arthur Spitz, Daniel Tatcon, Abraham Abba Weinstein, and Rose Zuckerman. In addition to those names that I just shared, is anyone saying Kaddish for anyone we didn't mention? Invite the mourners to join me on page 598, and if it's your custom to rise alongside them, you may do so at this time. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechonu v'yomechonu v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, b'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach la'alam u'li'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha brichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. Please be seated, and Shabbat Shalom. And thank you, everyone, for being here this morning, and especially for those that helped out in our service. A few important announcements. Of course, for us to join us for our lunch and Torah study, which will begin lunch right after service, Torah study at 12 o'clock, and we'll welcome our friends who are online to join us as well. A reminder that tomorrow from 3 to 5 o'clock, we have our Hanukkah party this year, a little advance of the holidays to make sure that we actually have everybody here. And it is designed for all ages. Obviously, there will be some things that are a little more kids-focused, but the goal really of our gatherings is for the whole community to be here. So we hope you'll join us. All sorts of stuff. Some, as you can see probably on your way in, some pretty great balloons. So if you like balloons, this is the place for you for sure tomorrow. Reminder again, this time of year is also an opportunity to do some good. So we are still accepting gifts, presents that we can give for our toy drive. Remember to bring them unwrapped, new. You can bring them tomorrow if you're coming. Also, coats, new coats, in particular clothing for Simi and Ola families. You can also do this by donating $18 or multiples of that to our website for the Social Justice Committee. We also just received an additional request from Maureen's Haven, the local homeless shelter, for men's and women's gloves and warm hats. So if you have those things, you can drop them off at the party or during business hours until December 30th. Also a reminder that we will light the first night of Hanukkah candles, I should call them candles, at the wharf as we always do. It's more of a switch than a candle, but we'll still be there together again, 6 o'clock, Wednesday, December 25th. We'll have hot chocolate and sufganiyot. But a reminder again, this time of year especially, if you're coming, please dress warmly. It's not the longest service, but even a half hour in that weather can be a lot. If I'm not mistaken, I think we're going to be able to close the wharf off again as we've done the last few years for safety reasons. So if you're planning to park on the wharf, the best thing to do is to try to get there a little bit early, and the police should let you through and be able to park. And we'll meet right on the corner near the windmill in town. And reminder also that Rabbi Alan Levin's virtual bereavement group our bereavement group happening online is Tuesday, December 17th from 6 to 7:30. There's also a meeting of the Anti-Semitism Committee that evening, December 17th at 7 o'clock. And I knew there was something else I'm forgetting. Somebody reminded me last night. Oh, board meeting on Wednesday as well. Any other announcements? Anything to add, Myra? Anything Musar related? No? All right. So with that, any requests for our closing song before we do Kiddush? Anybody feeling anything in particular this morning? And Keller, that's always a favorite. One of these days I'll get, when Penny was still coming, she would get us to do the Ladino version every once in a while that, Marcelo and Marshall and Rolly would do at B'nai Jeshurun. But my Spanish is so bad and my Ladino is even worse. So I have to work on it. But in any case, Ein Keloheinu, page 626. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadoneinu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mich Eloheinu, Mich Adoneinu, Mich Emalkeinu, Mich Moshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adoneinu, Nodel Emalkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adoneinu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adoneinu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. We'll rise for Kiddush, page 604. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. על כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת ויקדשהו סברי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. אמן. לחיים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המוציא לחם מן הארץ. Amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Please come next door. We'll eat a little, learn a little Torah.